Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over what avoidants do that is different, what they do differently when they actually love and respect you in comparison to when they don't. And I think that kind of sounds a little bit negative, but I'm going to actually explain where I got inspired to make this video, kind of why this idea came up. So, one of my patients recently brought something up. And this is not the first time this type of topic came up in therapy with my patients. And basically, my patient was mentioning and reflecting that I notice he was saying, and this happens a lot, where they will admit, I noticed that I feel differently about this person, or I really respect this person, this particular person, and I feel like I'm a different person, or I act differently with them. And that's part of sometimes how they feel, like they know that this person is the one that they want to be with, the person that they love. And so I was inspired by that, but I kind of put on the back burner because I hear that a lot in my sessions. But then actually my partner, who used to be avoidant, and he's a male, he brought something up, a really specific point that a couple of my patients brought up as well. And I thought that was really interesting because the point that he brought up, my partner, is actually common among my male avoidant patients. And it was something that was a little bit different from my experience when I used to be avoidant. And so I figured I only hear it from my male patients. My partner felt that this was something he noticed about himself that was different. Like when he started changing, like there were certain things that he noticed about himself when he started to love and respect. And the same thing with my patients, right? And so that particular point I feel is more common with male avoidance. And I'm going to put that one last. But I do feel like all of these points are very important. And some female avoidance can fit that last one. But I'll explain a little bit more why it's a little more common with male avoidance, okay? But most of these are regardless. And the very first one is taking accountability of themselves and what they do and the mistakes they may have made. And part of the reason why this is very important when an avoidant does this is because accountability can be challenging because it means that you admit that you made a mistake or that you've done something wrong. And it can be hard for an avoidant individual to take accountability because it makes them have to accept that without another person, sometimes without another person pointing it out, honestly, they may have not noticed it or they may have not recognized this pattern in themselves. And so what does that mean? It means that they have to admit that sometimes they can't do everything by themselves. They're not, a one-man circus. They are a person who needs other people. And that can be really challenging because then that means that their whole life they were formed to be independent. They were expected to be very independent, and that wasn't normal. And so they have to face that experience. Sometimes that's why accountability can be so challenging. But when an avoidant loves and respects somebody, they begin to take accountability because they don't want to hurt their partner. They want to apologize. They didn't mean it like that. And so taking accountability is something that they decided was better for them to do instead of losing or hurting their partner. So that's the first one. The second point is they make small steps of progress towards commitment, love, and acceptance of you in their life, okay? So what does that mean? Any sort of small change that you're noticing, affection. We had mentioned accountability. Being more open to being with you in public spaces. Being more open to doing things that more couples do together, right? Are small steps of progress. The reason why I mentioned they're small steps is because it's not like this person is saying, hey, let's get married tomorrow, right? The progression is small, but it's progressing and it doesn't go backwards, right? And avoidants do this differently when they love you, because when they don't, or they're struggling to love you or struggling to accept, you might see a little bit of a back and forth sometimes happening. And that may happen in the beginning, but when an avoidant really respects and loves you and they really want to commit to you, most avoidants do this. When you look back at the way they were in the beginning compared to the way they are now, you can see they have made progress towards commitment and love. Okay? The next one is your feelings and how you view them matters a lot to them. So your feelings and then also how you view your partner, the avoidant, matters to them, okay? So I'm going to give you an example because I feel like this one's a little bit less self-explanatory. Maybe you feel like your partner has been distracted and stressed, maybe because of work, okay? And maybe they become a little more short with you, a little more irritable, right? And they've been telling you a little bit about their work stress. So you are aware it's probably work. So you're not taking it personally, okay? But you've been telling them, hey, I think you're a little bit more stressed than you should be. Or maybe you don't even say it like that. Maybe you just tell them, hey, I noticed you're pretty stressed at work. Maybe like, is there anything I can do for you? Or, what can we do? Whatever it is. Like, so you're not necessarily mentioning the part where they're short with you because you think, okay, maybe if they just manage their stress, the shortness or irritability will go away, okay? But then one day in particular, they were particularly irritated about work and maybe they said something or they were just obviously very short with you. And at that point you were like, no, not going to take that. And you told them directly that they're stressed and you think they're taking their stress out on you. And you were obviously very frustrated. So what happens is the avoidant individual sees that you were immediately frustrated and that you were hurt. And they are hurt that they were short with you. So maybe before they would have crashed out. Maybe they would have denied it. Maybe they would have been upset about it. Or they said, no, you're being too picky or particular. But no, right away they saw, okay, you're upset. I have been stressed. My partner's been saying that. I don't want to see this happening to my partner anymore. They apologize, but they also show effort to immediately change. Why? Because your feelings and how you view them matters to them, right? You're viewing them as somebody who is irritable and maybe you're not, but that's what they might interpret it as. They're irritable, they're not managing their stress, and a lot of avoidants struggle with this. That's why I gave this example. This is common, right? This is very common. And they don't want you to view them as someone who doesn't take your feelings seriously. So immediately they decided, okay, I'm going to manage my stress. I'm going to apologize and I'm going to change. Maybe they didn't tell you directly. They probably apologized directly, but maybe they didn't tell you, hey, I'm going to change, but they did, right? And I think that's very important, okay? The next one is they ask your perspective before making decisions. Now, both male and female avoidants do this, but I will say female avoidants do this a little bit more when they open up. It's not they do it more. Well, both do this, but females do it in a higher frequency. Typically, they're just going to ask you your opinion or your perspective before making a decision. And it's because they respect you. They love you and they think that your opinion is very important. But it also means they're not a one-man show. They believe in you. They believe that what you're going to say matters. And your interpretation of whatever events are going on or whatever decision they're about to make is valuable to them to adjust their own perspective, which means you're part of their life, okay? And the last point, which I mentioned, was the one that my partner brought up, and it was something that a lot of these points patients bring up in general, but this one in particular is pretty common with male avoidance, okay? And I'm going to explain it because it sounds a little odd, but I've heard so many patients tell me this one. Female avoidants do this as well, okay? And I think every avoidant does this, but the way it feels for a male avoidant is a little bit different. And actually, I will say most men do this in general when they love and respect somebody. It's not really an attachment issue, but it's more prominent with male avoidance, and I'm going to explain it, okay? They will do things they said that they never would do, which that's part of all avoidance. But the difference is, or something they never thought they would do, right? So they do something that they never thought they would do, or they told you they would never do. But the reason is because it'll make you happy, and that's enough for them. Like, that is better for them, that you're happy instead of them being happy to not do it. Now, female avoidants feel this way too, but it's just not as passionate for a female avoidant or a female in general. And part of the reason why men take this more passionately is because in our society, American, but I think in general, globally, men are kind of raised to believe that how useful they are and the duty of what they have as a man matters a lot to their identity. And so there's two parts to this, okay? And female avoidants feel this way as well, but it's just not as extreme. When a man says they're never going to do something, and a female says she's never going to do something, it doesn't affect her self-worth as much, even if she's avoidant, to admit, okay, I was wrong. I am going to do it. I said I didn't want to commit. I said I never wanted to get married, but you know what? 5 years later, yeah, okay, I want to get married to you, right? It's not as difficult for a female because she doesn't feel like her self-worth and her value is her sometimes, right? And this is just the way society is. She doesn't feel like that's all she has to offer, right? Being correct or being useful or being a leader. She can be more than that typically, even if she's an avoidant, right? But with a man, regardless of your attachment style, typically admitting that he would never do something and then having to admit, okay, my whole identity of who I used to be is like wrong. Like I said I didn't want to get married or I didn't want to ever fall in love. And yet at the same time, here I am falling in love and getting married. And I am okay with throwing away my original identity or who I used to be for this person, for you, whoever this person is. And it's different because female avoidants or females in general, they are doing it for a specific person, but not the same passion. With a man, it's like he likes that he's doing it for one person or that very specific person. And with avoidance, they're even more particular because other men, most men will do this with not multiple women at the same time, but maybe his first girlfriend, he felt this way. And his second girlfriend, he felt that way. And then maybe he got married and this is how he feels about his wife, right? Avoidant individuals, they pull away after they have experienced heartbreak, right? And that's for both male and female. And so doing this again for somebody is really challenging. Basically starting a little bit of your identity from scratch. And so when a man does this, and a male avoidant specifically, he has thrown that identity away, part of what he thinks is an identity. And he's doing it for this one person to make them happy. And that's why he wanted to do it. And a lot of patients tell me this. It doesn't mean that he's only doing it because he's like a servant or he's miserable. No, this is what he wants to do. This is what makes him happy. It's very scary, but he will do this for somebody that he cares about. And the reason why is because they feel confidently that you are a person that's probably going to stay in their life. And so they don't have to risk doing this again or losing the new identity they're going to have when they adjust themselves for you. And that's why they only do this when they really care specifically about somebody or when they respect somebody. That was probably very confusing, and I apologize. But I hope this video made a little bit of sense. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.